Senator Hamilton's office, and he'll continue from here. Thank you, Raul.
Thank you very much, Alexei. Before I say anything, I really want to thank Alexei for his role in bringing everything here today. We would not be able to do it if it wasn't for his leadership as the acting head librarian of the Medgar College Library. So please give him a round of applause. There's so much to say, and it's going to be hard to say everything briefly, but I do want to introduce my office. So this is, we've been working very hard at the office of State Senator Jesse Hamilton. I'm the Director of Community Affairs. We have with us a couple of our staff members, including our Director of Diversity, Rhea Smith over there. So this is something that we are very committed to. There's a lot of, there's many ways to approach this. Our goal here, which really I got in with the help of Kathleen Holzer, who did tremendous help gathering everything together. Also, well, why don't you stand up for a second? She also really helped do this, and I think really helped define what our purpose here today is. Because this is an academic, we're at a college here, we're also combining public history, which is that we have people in this room who have helped create a record, a primary source pool for the academics to then follow upon. So a lot of times it is activists and neighborhood people, and sometimes, maybe they've got a PhD, maybe they don't have anything at all. Maybe they just have personal histories that creates a record that we can build upon. So really the goal here is to combine that, to combine the academic world with the activist world, which we have here in abundance. So I really want to thank everyone for being here very much. This is a great honor and very exciting for me to have this. So we've mentioned, I know Jacob Morris also, it's actually his conception to have this conference here, based on the first thing that we had. So let's also give a round of applause for Jacob Morris too. And I urge you to sign his petition, because Ida B. Wells lived in downtown Brooklyn. She lived right off of Willoughby and Fulton, and this history is being obliterated left and right. And so, while there's a lot to say, I do have to say my own personal connection to this, which is being very close to Mama Joy Monroe, Joy Chattel, however you want to call her. She was a real icon of this movement, and really, I think, lives today in her family and her daughter Shanae, who's here. And really in all of us. So we've got a lot of rounds of applause. Just this morning I was looking at this picture of this house that was built in 1848 or 1849, surrounded by hotels and all these fantastic developments. Everything else has been destroyed in this neighborhood. This history that took place here in Brooklyn and in New York City and some other very important things is being obliterated. So, this is a different sort of violence against our history that is happening left and right. And these buildings are going down partially because people don't know about the importance of that history. And even if they're up, people don't realize the connections here. So this is also reclaiming for me our space here, our physical space, and to recognize the history of these people who were very brave, who lived all around us, and I'm really trying to carry on that tradition here. So to that end, this is also right here, right now, a new community that we are building upon. This is, as it's existed already, this today is our new form of this community. Please give us your contact information. If you want to hear more about any presenter, if there's somebody else in the audience that you want us to get in touch with, we should have all the names. So if you haven't given us your email or other contact information, we want to do that, because this is just the start of a conversation. Hopefully we'll be back next year, but this should go on all the time. in many discussions, this stuff takes care of. And this is what really our office is trying to do here. So it's not just preserving this history, but also making sure that the people who've lived in this community can also sustain living here as well. That this history is carried in the buildings, it's also carried in the people here. And we need to preserve all of that and learn from all of that as a powerful resource. So, you know, we have an academic connection here, but there's also a thing of, you know, our friend, I think Reuben Lipkin over here is a gentleman over here. He has helped people stay in their houses over and over again. If you have a problem paying your rent, he will help you stay in your apartment. He does that year after year, person after person. So this is, there's many aspects of this, and that is all I should say right now. Okay. All right, so with that, let's move on to our first presenter here. And if you don't mind, we are an academic conference, and I don't know everybody's academic title, so I know people personally. So you can come up.
Thank you, Raoul. My name is Julie M. Finch, and I am co-chair with Fern Luskin of the Hopper-Gibbons Underground Railroad building in Manhattan, the only documented Underground Railroad building so far in Manhattan. I'm not used to this cord being here. Hold on. I'll remove this. And I am a Quaker. I'm a member of 15th Street Friends Meeting in Manhattan. And I'm going to talk about Sarah Mapps Douglas. This is her work right here. And I first heard of her in the book Fit for Freedom, Not for Friendship, which is written by two Quaker women, Danya McDaniel and Vanessa July, I can't pronounce her name. And that is where I first heard that Sarah Mapps Douglas and her mother had to sit on the back bench in Quaker meeting houses in the 1830s, and I was horrified. So I've been researching her a little bit. While her mother, Grace Bastille Douglas, was a lifelong adherent to Quaker principles, she never attempted to join the meeting in Philadelphia because she was dissuaded, quote, by a friend who said, "Do not apply, you will only have your feelings wounded." And Sarah said, "Even when a child, my soul was made sad with hearing 5 or 6 times during the course of our meeting this language of remonstrance addressed to those who were willing to sit by us." Sarah's painted images on her written letters may be the first or earliest surviving examples of sign paintings by an African American woman. These paintings are contained within the Casey Dickerson album, and this is a rare collection of 19th century friendship letters between a group of women. When she was very young, she organized a collection of money when she was 25 years old in 1831 to send to William Lloyd Garrison to support the Liberator. She also helped with the creation of the Female Literary Society, a group of African American women dedicated to improving their skills and deepening their identification with enslaved sisters. The societies were based on the idea that for the welfare and survival of the community, individuals had to come together in larger groups that would both create a sense of national identity and collective spirit, and would extend essential knowledge to the Black community, both free and enslaved. She herself often wrote prose and poetry, much of it published in the Liberator, the Colored American, and the Anglo-African magazine, some under the pseudonym And with her mother, she was a founding member with Lucretia Coffin Mott and many other women, including Louisa Alcott's mother, Abba, was a member of the biracial Philadelphia Female Anti-Slavery Society. From the beginning, it was interracial, and the purpose of the society was to secure the total abolition of slavery as soon as possible, without any compensation to the slaveholders, as well as to procure equal civil and religious rights with the European American people of this country. Within its first year, it also established a school for African American children in Philadelphia. And they also promoted the boycott of goods manufactured by enslaved people, and they lobbied for emancipation, as I said earlier. Sarah served as a member of the board of directors of the Committee on Annual Affairs, of the Education Committee, recording and corresponding secretary, librarian, and manager. She also helped learn more. She studied anatomy, female health and hygiene, and etc. at the Female Medical College of Pennsylvania. She did marry for a short time in 1855 to William Douglas. I do want to say that in my secondary source research, I was happy to find that her great-grandmother was named Satterwhite, and she was a member of the Delaware Nation of Native Americans. She also wrote a biography of her grandfather, Cyrus Bustill, in 1856, who was a baker, and he had been freed by his, I think his second or third quote-unquote owner, who was a Quaker, and he had a baking business. What's the time like for me?
That's 6 minutes so far.
Okay, thanks. And thank you. And Sarah was very close friends with Angelina Grimke and her sister Sarah Moore Grimke. So I think that's it for now. I'm going to talk about Lucretia Coffin Mott. So the second slide shows a picture of Sarah Maps Douglas, right there. That's all I could find on Google Images. Okay, now I'm ready for this third slide. Thank you, Min. Thank you. Oh, I didn't know that was here. The remote was found. Okay. Wow, I don't know how to begin. I'll begin with Frederick Douglass's reminiscence of Lucretia Mott. I shall never forget the first time I ever saw and heard Lucretia Mott. It was in the town of Lynn, Massachusetts, in a little hall over Jonathan Buffum's store. The speaker was attired in the usual Quaker dress, free from startling colors, plain, rich, elegant, and without superfluity, the very sight of her a sermon. And then on another page he says, great as this woman was in speech and persuasive as she was in her writings, she was incomparably greater in her presence. She spoke to the world through every line of her countenance. In her, there was no contradiction between her thought and her acts. Excuse me. My favorite anecdote is from The Valiant Friend, a biography by Margaret Hopes Bacon. And there was a huge mob outside the slavery convention in New York, and people were very worried. I'm pretty sure it's Abby Kelly who was speaking from New England, and she was very calm. And the noise outside increased, and then the women realized that they had to leave this hall. And Lucretia said to somebody, I'm going to take this arm of this man and just leave with him. He will help me go out. And the next day in a restaurant, she recognized this man, and she went over to him and said something like, "I thank thee for helping me yesterday." And they shook hands or something, and as she left, he turned to his friends at his table and said, "Who was that?" And they said, "That was Lucretia Mott." And he said, "Oh, well, she is a nice lady." And she was, I'm sure, was surprised to discover that the man who she had taken his arm of was, I think it was Mr. Rinders, who was a notorious mob leader in New York City against the abolitionists. That's Lucretia for you. In 1840 in London, Lucretia and some other women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton were at the anti-slavery convention. 4 more? Thanks. And they discussed the fact that they were not allowed in the convention. I think you'll hear more about that later from Caroline. And then in 1848, Lucretia Mott's husband, James Mott, always accompanied her to all of these events, and when she went preaching as a Quaker minister around the different states. So they went up to visit the Seneca Indians on the Cattaraugus Reservation in New York State. And the Motts were members of the Indian Committee of New York and Philadelphia yearly meetings, so they wanted to check on, see how things were going there. They stopped at Auburn, New York for their annual visit with her sister Martha and her husband David Wright, and they wanted to see her old friend, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who had recently moved to Seneca Falls. A Quaker woman nearby, Anne Hunt, I think her name is, invited Lucretia and Martha to tea, along with Elizabeth. They talked and decided to put out a notice in the paper of a women's rights convention at Seneca Falls that would be held the next day. I just want to say that as a Quaker, there was a huge schism where Elias Hicks went and toured in the I don't have the date in front of me, 30s, 40s. From Long Island, he went and toured around preaching and speaking about his feeling that Quakerism should return to simplicity. It should not be dependent on the actual words in the Bible, and it should come from the inner light, which is where Quakers sit in Quaker meeting and they wait and see if they get a message from God, because they don't, I'm sure some of you know that they don't believe in having a minister to speak for them. And some of the Quakers in England were outraged because they were staying to the old way of doing things, and they were called Orthodox Quakers. So this is Lucretia on that subject, especially the great truth that God is the teacher of his people himself. And she believed that the living spirit of religion must not be confused with the form that had once cloaked it in the past, whether in written form as in the Bible or in customs and ceremonies. This spirit, Lucretia believed, demanded that men and women involve themselves actively in reform. The great heresy is to await in a kind of indifference for the light to come to us. And I think that's all. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.